Thank you, Lord Chairman. Earlier on you said to us that we don't have an invention problem, it's more an exploitation problem. And I wondered what this means in a defence context. Does innovation and invention amount to the same thing? Are there differences? But could you tease that out for us? And are we predominantly talking about inventing new weapons systems that deliver more combat power for a given level of expenditure? Or should we understand a term more broadly? And being very specific, I mentioned earlier on AJAX. Was that an invention problem? Was that an innovation problem? Has that been an exploitation problem? And given what the Public Accounts Committee has said about it having been a disaster from day one, what lessons do we draw?
I kick off. So there is definitely a difference between invention and innovation. So taking it from understanding what your problem is, having an idea about how you'll solve that, inventing a way to solve that problem, that is at the early stages of it. You then need to scale it in order for it to become a genuine innovation. So to me, there is a difference, and the difference is in that scaling part, and that is the difficult bit. That's the bit where you're pulling these things across the Valley of Death, as mentioned. So there is a difference there. We consciously take a very broad view of innovation. So innovation to me is everything from the examples we've seen previously of additive printing out in South Sudan, where a enthusiastic REMI tradesman, I think it was, decided to pull together a 3D printer and was printing parts of the guttering because that was a really cheap way and avoided having to bring this stuff in. It's everything from that through to hypersonic weapons, but it's also innovating in the way that you operate. So for me, the big prize in this is helping defence achieve the sort of agility that my colleagues have talked about, which is what is going to give us that competitive edge. So that's the kind of end goal of innovation for defence for me. So we take a really broad view on it. On AJAX, so the thing that struck me about the way the AJAX programme played out is the transparency and the candour in the report that was written and made public. And that's really important, because I think we have to be honest about when things have gone wrong, because that is the only way we'll learn the lessons from it. So I think the fact that Defence published a pretty coruscating report about how the programme had run was very important. We have to also accept that if we are going to innovate and if we are going to try really quite new things, whether that's an approach or technology, occasionally things will go wrong, and we need to acknowledge that and accept that. And sometimes that will mean that taxpayers' money has bought us a lesson rather than a capability. And sometimes the fact that you've made an investment in something and at the end of it you find out that it doesn't deliver what you want it to, that itself is a really important piece of work that you've done. And I can't remember the exact expression that Elon Musk uses, but it's when his rockets explode, they don't explode. It's sort of a rapid, unplanned disintegration. So because as part of that, they acknowledge that sometimes innovation costs you money to learn lessons. So that would be my sort of opening gambit on that.
Thank you very much. Dr. Goad.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think on AJAX, I mean, you know, the Mold's been quite transparent on the report. I mean, I think one of the lessons we probably do need to learn is how much of that we knew and it didn't get to the right places. So we are just doing a bit of a study about which we've called the Great Scientific Department, because we already do great science, but if we want to be a great scientific department, we need to make sure our processes and our behaviours are such that if we know something, we actually act on it. And that's one where I think we probably could have done a better job. And it's all about, how do we provide scientific advice to the decision makers, and how do we make sure we get that right?
Have you got it working now?
Well, it works. Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? It works when it works, and when it doesn't work, it doesn't. And that's not necessarily...
Well, thank you.
There you go. But the issue I think we want to do is to actually make sure that we've done that in a very systematic way.
I think, doesn't that speak to the idea that innovation is as much what you do in the mind as it might be in terms of organisation or process or delivery of an item, of an artefact. And innovations sometimes fail. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. If you look at all the great scientific breakthroughs, many of them started with things going wrong, or indeed serendipity. We discover all sorts of things by not really looking for them in the first place. One of the things that SONAC is trying to do is to learn from others. What are they doing right, and what are they doing wrong, and how do we actually then apply those? How do we bring those lessons back to ourselves? And one of the things that's been really striking is the humility to learn from Ukrainians about how they are doing business. And there's much that we can learn there. And that goes from everything from, how they've made use of commercial drones, how youngsters are getting involved in the defence of their nation, a whole raft of things that we should probably be looking at very carefully, and that's what SONAC is for. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Lord Anderson, over to you.
May I run two questions together because of the